Jackson McAllister always hated the desert wind. Deployed for the third time in 2 years, he had grown used to the desert's scorching heat and the way fine grains of sand found every seam of his gear. But the wind, dry and ceaseless, still felt like some cosmic irritant against his skin. This evening he walked from the communications tent toward the small makeshift cafe the base had thrown together. As he stepped inside, the overhead light glared off the metal tables, reminding him of how far he was from the comfortable living room in which he'd once reclined on his favorite couch back home. "Yeah," he murmured under his breath. "I'll be glad when this is over." He was about to order a coffee when his phone buzzed. The number flashed local, with the same area code as his hometown. His heart gave a slight jolt. He had 2 kids, a wife, and a quiet suburban street that usually didn't make trouble. He answered quickly. "Hello," he said, tense creeping into his voice. Jackson came a low murmur. "It's Elijah, from next door." Jackson swallowed. Why would Elijah be calling? "Hey man, everything okay?" Jackson asked. "I've still got 4 weeks left here." "That's what I wanted to talk to you about," Elijah said, sounding uncomfortable. "Look, Jackson, I wouldn't do this unless I thought you really needed to know, but your wife, Tamara, she's having people over." Jackson pulled the phone tighter against his ear as he stepped back outside the makeshift Sea Cafe. The evening sun in the Middle Eastern sky glowed red, but all he saw was the swirling chaos of that single statement. Sheck, having people over. "Elijah," Jackson said, slowly, "you can't just call me with half a story. I'm thousands of miles from home. If something's wrong, tell me. There are men." Elijah said in a resigned voice, "It's not just one. Different men, different cars. They show up at all hours, but especially late, and they're inside your house for quite a while." Jackson's heart hammered. He tried to keep his breathing measured, tried to focus on the details. "You're sure these aren't just friends, colleagues? Maybe it's her cousin or something else?" "I'm sure." Elijah replied a few times. "I caught glimpses through the window. I saw them on the couch. It didn't look like any casual get-together. I've got license plates, pictures." "I'm sorry, Jackson. You're too good a guy for me to just keep quiet." A long moment passed where Jackson's pulse roared in his ears. Then he said in a stony hush, "Send me everything." He spent the night poring over the photos Elijah emailed. He recognized the front of his house, the driveway, the porch, the big silver mailbox. And there were men, some older, some younger. Cars parked at suspicious times. Timestamp. After Tim's stamp, several glimpses showed Tamara at the doorway, letting them in with a bright smile. A few shots taken through parted blinds showed her leaning across a stranger on the couch or his arm around her waist. An unspoken closeness that turned Jackson's stomach. The next morning, the scorching desert wind felt sharper, and the air seemed harder to breathe. It took him 2 days to get emergency leave. He said it was a family crisis. He wasn't lying. The commanding officer gave him a stiff handshake and told him to handle business back home. Jackson packed his duffel with single-minded focus, ignoring his bunkmates' questions about whether he was all right. He just needed to get on that plane. On the flight back, he stared at the overhead lights and tried to piece it together. Logically, Tamara, mother of his 2 daughters, a woman he'd known for 8 years. She had to be lonely, sure, with him gone so much. But multiple men, over and over, why, he whispered to himself. It felt impossible, yet he had the evidence on his phone. By the time he landed stateside, his head was full of swirling anger and heartbreak, and that raw edge of betrayal that made him want to break something. He couldn't just storm home and confront her. If Tamara was brazen enough to do this under her own roof, she might lie her way out of it if he didn't present airtight proof. No, He told himself he would handle this carefully, logically. That was how to approach any mission gather intelligence plan, then strike. He pulled his rental car into a modest motel parking lot about 15 minutes from his quiet neighborhood and used a credit card she didn't know about. The room smelled of stale coffee and cheap air freshener. The floral bedspread had seen better days. Jackson sat on the edge of that bed, phone in hand, going through Elijah's evidence once more. He pressed the screen to call Elijah. The phone rang, and then a voice, "Jackson." Elijah said softly, "Thanks for everything." Jackson answered, "I'm here in town. I'm not going to my house yet. Let me know if you need anything." Elijah said, relief flooding his tone. "It's been bugging me for months." A chill ran through Jackson's spine. "Months," he echoed. "This has been going on for months. I only really noticed it consistently the last 2 months. Elijah, clarify, but I suspect longer. Look, I know it hurts if you want me to watch the house tonight. I will. I can send you a text. If anyone comes by," Jackson's jaw flexed. "Appreciated. Gathering evidence." That night, Jackson parked 2 streets away from his own driveway, switching off the engine. The clock read PM. He settled low in the driver's seat, phone balanced on his thigh, eyes trained on the road leading up to his house. He waited, adrenaline thrumming as minutes blend into hours at a white truck slowed in front of his place. A tall, thick-set man hopped out, pressed something on his phone, and Tamara opened the front door. Jackson tensed his phone's camera, captured the entire thing through the gloom, though he zoomed as best he could. He'd never seen the man, stocky build, broad shoulders, a baseball cap. Tamara leaned in for a hug. That looked very comfortable. Too comfortable, Jackson thought bitterly. He watched them vanish inside the house. Lights glowed behind drawn curtains. He rubbed his stubbled chin, forcing himself to remain calm. The first step was to gather as much visual proof as possible, not to burst in and ruin everything with rage. An hour later, the front door opened again. The man emerged, adjusting his shirt. He looked around the dark street as if checking for watchers, never suspecting Jackson's hidden vantage. Then he hopped into his truck and drove away. Jackson exhaled, then pressed his phone's record button to stop another piece of evidence, along with Elijah's earlier footage and the screenshots of men's license plates. The fury brewing inside him felt like a physical weight in his gut. The second night, Jackson returned, this time no visitors. On the third, around midnight, a young man showed up in a beat-up hatchback. He stayed for a good 2 hours. The pattern was consistent. Men appeared as though invited by a simple text, came in discreetly, left. In the small hours of the night, Jackson decided he had enough visual proof. He wanted audio, something to confirm that Tamara was sleeping with them. He turned to an old friend from his military tech department, a hobbyist who toyed with small listening devices. "I can get you a bug you can hide in your own living room," the friend told him over the phone. "You sure about this? Because if she catches it, that's a massive breach of trust." Jackson's voice was hollow. "Trust is already gone." He arranged for a discreet drop-off and soon had a tiny microphone no bigger than his pinky fingertip. Later, in the dead of night, he snuck around the back, found the key stashed under a flower pot, and let himself inside. With measured footsteps, it felt. Surreal to tiptoe through his own living room as though he were an intruder. The place smelled the same cinnamon air freshener with a faint hint of Tamara's perfume. His children's toys were stacked in the corner. The heartbreaking wave of longing for normally nearly brought him to his knees. He planted the bug behind the TV console, hidden among cables. Before leaving, he slid open a closet door and looked at Tamara's coat, the one he'd bought her for Christmas 2 years ago. Then, he noticed a large men's jacket that definitely wasn't his size. He swallowed a tremor of fury. forced himself back into stealth mode and left. He spent the next morning at a diner, phone in hand, listening live to the Bug's audio feed. For hours the house was silent. Then around noon, he heard Tamara's voice. "Oh, come on in," she said brightly. "You want something to drink?" A man's muffled voice responded something about being fine with water. Jackson's heart pounded. He turned the volume up, ignoring the half-eaten scrambled eggs on his plate. They made small talk about her week. Then the conversation turned flirtatious. The microphone, though tiny, picked up enough. "You're looking incredible," the man said. "You sure your husband's away?" Tamara let out a short laugh. "Believe me, he's not coming back anytime soon. Not that he'd care if he did. Always gone, always busy, and I get lonely, you know." Jackson's grip on his phone tightened until the corners dug into his palm. He felt each word like a scalpel scraping away any lingering illusions. A few minutes later, the sound of kissing, shuffling, Tamara's giggle, the man's breathing intensifying. Jackson forced himself to keep listening, jaw clenched, then footsteps likely toward the couch. Soft moans he recognized all too vividly. He pressed stop on the recording app, his stomach twisted and knots. He'd heard enough. It was more proof than any court would need. 2 days later, Jackson walked into the last front office of Harding and Lowe Attorneys. A young receptionist recognized his name and escorted him to an office lined with thick legal toss. A bespectacled lawyer named Simone Harding rose to greet him. "Captain McAllister," she said, shaking his hand. "Please have a seat. I'm told this is a delicate family matter." Jackson swallowed. That's one way to put it. He opened the folder in his lap, pulling out printouts of screenshots, license plates, pictures of Tamara hugging other men. Timestamps. He had an external drive with audio files, too. Simone's brows rose as she flipped through them. "It's quite a bit of evidence," she commented gently. "I want to file for divorce with minimal financial damage," Jackson said curtly. "I also want custody of my daughters. I can't just let them stay with a mother who thinks it's okay to bring random men home. She's reckless or worse." Simone took a slow breath. "You have a strong case. In many states, adultery can be a factor in divorce settlements, particularly in awarding or denying alimony. If you have proof, I have it." He interrupted recordings, photos. She glanced at him. "All right, but let me warn you. Don't confront her physically. Don't do anything rash that might undermine your position. Keep your cool. Gather more evidence if necessary, and we'll proceed. I'll draw the papers when you serve her. It's going to be explosive, especially if she doesn't see it coming." Jackson closed his eyes briefly. The image of Tamar's betrayal was burned in his mind. "She won't see it coming," he said quietly. "Then we'll be prepared," Simone said. "I also recommend you start protecting your bank accounts. Sometimes, when an unfaithful spouse realizes the jig is up, they try to drain accounts or hide assets." Jackson gave a nod already, feeling that iron resolve come over him. Understood, preparing for the showdown over the next week. He kept up his quiet surveillance from the motel. He recorded each new man's arrival and departure, accumulating an unassumable wall of proof. He also visited the bank, separating most of his money into a new account, under just his name. He froze shared credit cards, ensuring Tamara couldn't run up a secret bill. Late one evening, Elijah texted him. "Hey man, that big black SUV is back again." Jackson's entire body clenched. The black SUV had shown up a few times with tinted windows. Its driver was a slick-looking guy in designer clothes. Jackson had particularly disliked him for reasons he couldn't name. Maybe that his erog seemed to match Tamara's easy flirtation. With a bitter twist of his mouth, Jackson drove over, parked in his usual hidden spot, and started filming. Sure enough, the black SUV was in the driveway. Lights on in the living room, he glimpsed the silhouette of the man with Tamara, arms around her waist. In that moment, Jackson realized he no longer felt heartbreak, only a burning need. To finalize this, she had turned their home into some casual flophouse for men, and she was doing it while he was out, risking his life for the family. Enough was enough. After the man left, Jackson made calls to finalize everything. He arranged an official date to serve the divorce papers, had them in his glove box ready to be delivered, and started planning exactly how to confront Tamara. Part of him, though, wanted a measure of not just justice, but an unfiltered vengeance. He daydreamed about a scenario that put her lover on his knees, made him face the consequences. But the lawyer's cautionary words echoed in the back of his mind. Don't do anything rash yet that night. The anger wouldn't let him sleep. The next morning, a Saturday, Jackson finally decided to go home, and, broad daylight, he unlocked the front door, letting the soft smell of home wash over him. It felt both familiar and alien. The living room was tidy, perhaps unnaturally so, like Tamara had tried to wipe away any evidence from the previous night. He found her in the kitchen, hair tied back, making pancakes. For a surreal moment, he recalled the sweet weekends they used to share when he'd be home from deployment. Eager to see her and the girls, she whirled around at the sound of the door. Her eyes widened, spatula frozen in her hand. "Jackson," she said in disbelief. You're back. I thought you weren't home for another 3 weeks. He dropped his duffel bag by. The entry plans changed. She set the spatula down, face flickering with a complicated blend of guilt and confusion. "You look exhausted. When did you—" "How?" He steeled himself against the wave of emotions. "Got back a week ago. Actually, he said I was staying in a motel." Her brows furrowed. "A motel? Why on earth?" He stared at her until she began to fidget, as if sensing some deep threat. "Because I've been watching," he said, softly watching what she asked, voice warbling everything. He placed his phone on the counter. A still image showed the front door camera Elijah had captured. Her eyes flicked to it and she ped. You've been spying on me," she whispered, cheeks going ashen. He reached inside his jacket, pulled out the stack of photos. "Tell me, I'm wrong?" he said, tossing them across the counter. There were photos of different men stepping onto the porch. One shot showing her hugging that stocky stranger near the living room window. Tamara's mouth hung open, face twisted in panic. That's not... How could you, Jackson? Let me explain," she gasped. "Explain how you've turned our house into some random hooking spot," he snapped. "Explain how you couldn't wait for me to come home, or even talk to me about being lonely or frustrated. So you decided to bring all these men in Tamara's eyes filled with tears. It's not that simple. You're never around. I've been alone for so long and we barely talk anymore. You come home for a few weeks and then you're gone again. You act like the kids and I are some side gig in your life." Jackson's anger spiked. "I do that to keep a roof over our heads, to pay for everything you, the girls, need. You think I want to be deployed all the time, that I enjoy risking my life in a desert? I do it because it's my job and it keeps us secure." She folded her arms defensively. "Well, I needed actual companionship, Jackson." He bit back a surge of raw fury. "So you found it with multiple men," he said, voice shaking. "You had them in my bed on my couch for months. How many, Tamar?" She glared at him through tears. "What difference does it make? You've clearly decided I'm some monster. You want a confession. Fine. It was more than one. Yes, I thought it was harmless. Then it kept going. I got in over my head, but your constant absence. It's your fault, too. He let out a harsh laugh. I was absent because of my duty, not because I wanted to run around with strangers. Her face crumpled. I never planned for it to be so many, she said quietly, but I was resentful and lonely. One affair turned into two, and I guess I just stopped caring. Jackson's rage turned cold. Well, I care, and now you'll face the consequences. He pulled the divorce papers from his bag and dropped them on the countersign. These when you're ready, he said. I want the house. I want custody of the kids. I'm not giving you a penny more than you deserve. And from where I stand, you deserve nothing. She stared at the official documents as though they were a live grenade. You can't just steal my kids away, she cried. He shook his head. I'm not stealing them. I'm protecting them. If you bring random men in while they're upstairs, that's irresponsible. And I can prove it in court. Tamara burst into tears, sinking against the counter. Jackson, please, we can talk about this. You don't have to blow everything up. He swallowed. A part of him recognized the heartbreak in her that she might be genuinely remorseful in this moment. But the avalanche was already rolling. I tried to talk with you for years. He said you made your choices. He left her crying in the kitchen, stepping out to the porch to breathe in the fresh midday air. The weight on his chest was suffocating. In the days that followed, the tension in the house was unbearable. They had 2 daughters, Vanessa, 9, and Tori, 6, who were staying with Tamara's mother for a short while so the parents could sort things out. That left Jackson and Tamara alone under the same roof. She tried to talk to him repeatedly, tried to reason with him, but he retreated to the guest bedroom, ignoring her attempts. He was too angry, too hurt. Then, one afternoon, a day before Tamara's mother was supposed to bring the girls home, Jackson noticed a strange car rolling up out front. Peering through the living room curtains, he recognized that black SUV. A tall man stepped out looking determined. Tamara rushed out the door to meet him on the porch. Jackson pressed his ear to the window, hearing raised voices. What are you doing here? Tamara hissed. We need to talk. The man said you told me your husband was overseas for weeks. Now I hear he's back messing up everything. And what about you and me? She let out a harsh whisper. There is no you and me. Everything's falling apart now, thanks to how sloppy you were the other night. You took calls in my kitchen. Like you own the place? The man scoffed. Oh, so it's my fault. Maybe if you told me the truth about him coming back, I wouldn't have walked into a trap. Where is he anyway? Jackson felt his temper flare. He's talking about me like I'm some inconvenience. He slipped out the side door, circling around to the front porch. They were so engrossed in arguing, they didn't see him until he was halfway up the path looking for me. Jackson called, voice echoing across the small lawn. The man whirled, blinking, in surprise. Tamara, eyes huge, took a step back. Jackson's gut coiled as he recognized the man's confident sneer. This was someone who clearly had no shame in stepping into another man's marriage. You must be Jackson, the man said coolly. You got a name? Jackson asked, fists curling at his sides. Call me Carlos, the man replied. Look, I didn't come here to fight. Oh, Jackson shot back. You came here to see my wife again. Carlos set his jaw. I just need clarity, Tamara. You said you'd handle this. Now he's messing with everything. Tamara let out an anguished groan. Carlos, please leave. This is not the time or place. But Jackson had heard enough. Some in him snapped. You want clarity? I'll give you clarity, he growled. You invaded my home, took advantage of a lonely woman, and now you're acting like you're the victim. Get off my property. Carlos's eyes flickered. She invited me. Man, it's not my fault. Your marriage was on the rocks. Tamara reached for Jackson's arm. Please, don't do anything crazy. Jackson turned to her, voice shaking with rage. Crazy? How about letting this jerk swagger through my house while I'm risking my life overseas? That's crazy. He shoved Carlos's heart in the chest. The man stumbled back off the porch steps, nearly losing his balance. Get out of here before I really lose my temper, Jackson warned. Carlos's face twisted in anger, but he saw the fury in Jackson's eyes. You're not worth it, he muttered, rubbing his chest where Jackson's palm had struck him. Tamara, you've got my number if you ever want to talk. She glared. Just go. He climbed into his SUV, slamming the door and reverser out in a squeal of tires. Tamara burst into tears, covering her face. Why can't you just let me handle things quietly? She sobbed. I never asked him to come back here. Jackson gave a bitter laugh. You should have thought about that before inviting him in the first place. She dropped onto the porch bench, tears streaming. I messed up. I'm sorry, all right. I never wanted it to go this far. He stepped away, voice husky with betrayal. Well, it did. That evening, Jackson sat in the dark living room, staring at the array of evidence he'd compiled. Photos, recordings, the divorce papers, yet unsigned. The ache in his chest told him he wasn't satisfied with just a legal outcome. The sense of betrayal demanded more. He opened a drawer in the side table. Inside was a small black lockbox containing his personal sidearm, a .357 revolver. He'd never used it stateside, except for practice at the range. He lifted it, feeling the weight in his palm. This is dangerous, he whispered, but maybe it's exactly what they deserve. His mind flitted to the image of Carlos, sneering in his face, or those other men casually walking in as though it were their house. The fury welled up. Anew, the lawyer's warning chimed in his mind. Don't do anything that might cost you custody. He closed his eyes. Maybe he could orchestrate a confrontation that exposed the truth once and for all, something no judge could ignore. A sting. Perhaps he knew enough about infiltration and subterfuge from the army. If Tamara insisted on continuing these affairs, or if any of these men came back, he'd catch them in the act. This time, face to face with a camera rolling. He pictured pinning them to the ground on the front porch, forcing them to confess the affair with Tamara in front of the world, or at least in front of someone who mattered. The voice in his head asked, Is that what you want? To humiliate them? He stared at the gun. Maybe so. He was done, being the naive, blindsided husband. A week later, Tamara had effectively moved to her mother's with the kids. They rarely spoke, except for short, tense updates about custody. Discussions. The house was mostly empty. Jackson, still living there, found it easier on his raw nerves not to see her. Daily, part of him felt relief. He didn't want to watch her mope or plead forgiveness. Late one afternoon, while clearing old files from the home office, he discovered a note scrolled in Tamara's handwriting. A date, a time, and an address. Beneath, she'd scribbled the name John. Curiosity flared. Was this another rendezvous? He pocketed the paper, a surge of adrenaline dancing along his veins. If she was hooking up again, maybe he could use that. He texted Elijah for some background help, but Elijah just said, Haven't seen her around. She left with suitcases. Jackson decided to investigate himself. He drove out to the address on the note that Friday night. It was a small bar on the outskirts of the city, half-empty parking lot. From the driver's seat, he watched Tamara step out of a friend's car, glancing around. The tall man, brown hair, wearing a casual button-down, approached. They talked briefly, She looked hesitant, but then they both headed into the bar side by side. Jackson followed them in quietly. The place smelled of spilled beer and old leather. Neon lights buzzed overhead. Tamara and the man, presumably John, took a booth in the corner. Jackson perched at the bar, half hiding under a baseball cap. He sipped a soda, straining to listen. They seemed to have an intense discussion. John reached out, took her hand. She looked distressed. He couldn't catch all the words, but leaned the... Tamara was venting about her crazy husband who found out everything, and that she was stuck dealing with the fallout. John's eyebrows rose. He tried to comfort her, stroking her hand. Jackson's stomach twisted. She's still seeking emotional or physical comfort in random men. He felt a renewed wave of fury, but also a sense of clarity. Tamara was who she was, and no last-minute apologies would fix it. After an hour, they left. He didn't see them exchange more than an awkward hug in the parking lot. Perhaps they parted ways, perhaps not. Jackson considered confronting them right there, but decided against it. This time he'd keep his powder dry. Late, the next night, Jackson received a text from an unknown number. "Jackson, your wife's. At the house she brought. Some guy thought you should know." He jolted upright, suspicion flaring. Was it a neighbor or one of Elijah's acquaintances? It didn't matter if Tamara had come back to his home with another man. It was the perfect chance to strike. He drove like a man possessed, the 357 tucked under his seat the entire time. An internal voice warred inside him, "Don't do this, you'll jeopardize everything." But another part replied, "They've taken everything from you already." When he pulled up, the street was dark. The same black SUV sat in his driveway. Carlos again. Jackson felt a savage grin tug at his lips. Perfect. He took out his phone, pressed record, then opened the glove compartment to reveal a small handheld camera as well. "Let's see how tough he is when the husband's right here," he muttered. He stepped out of the car. The front door was slightly ajar, probably not locked. He nudged it open and heard muffled voices from the upstairs bedroom. His bedroom. A wave of revulsion slammed him. Without a second thought, he climbed the stairs. The voices grew clearer. "You sure you want to do this?" Carlos asked. "I thought you said you were done, Tamara." Sigh. Everything's unraveling, but I needed to feel something good again. I can't talk to my husband. He's like a stranger." Jackson's hand tightened on the banister. He waited just outside the bedroom door, heart pounding. Then he shoved it open, camera in one hand, the other near his revolver. Tamara let out a shriek, scrambling off the bed. Carlos cursed, grabbing for his shirt. Jackson stood there, phone lens aimed at them, its smile. He said quietly, "You're on camera, Jackson." Tamara shrieked, "What are you doing? Stop filming!" Carlos swung his legs off the bed, face contorting. "You psycho! Go! Get out of here! You get out!" Jackson snarled, brandishing the camera. "I had it with you creeps walking into my house like it's a hotel. Let's have you say hello to your family, or your wife if you have one." He tapped the screen, flipping the camera to show Carlos's face. "Clearly tell them who you are and why you're here." Carlos lunged forward as if to slap the camera away. Jackson stepped back and drew the revolver, the weight solid in his hand. "Touch me and I swear I'll make you regret it." Tamar gasped, pressing herself to the wall, eyes locked on the gun. Jackson put that down. Carlos lifted his hands in surrender, an edge of fear in his eyes. "You're insane, man. You can't threaten me with a gun in your own house. Watch me," Jackson said, voice low with fury. "Out of the bed, both of you." He motioned with the barrel. Carlos, still shirtless, slid off the bed. Tamara trembled, hair tangled around her face. Jackson pointed to the hallway, Move. They stumbled down the stairs, Jackson and trailing with our revolver. Adrenaline coursed through his veins, making him almost giddy outside. On the porch, the security light clicked on, bathing them in harsh brightness. He pressed record on his phone. "Again, on your knees," Jackson commanded Carlos. Carlos glowed. "No way." Jackson cocked the hammer on the revolver with a menacing click. "Do it." Carlos slowly sank to his knees, arms raised. Tamar let out a ragged sob. "Jackson, please. You'll go to prison. Stop. Think about the kids." He flicked a glance at her voice, dripping with anger. "I'm not the one who forgot them in the first place. You want to break vows? Fine. But you do it in my bed. I'll show the entire world who you are." Then to Carlos, "Say your name. Say what you're doing here." Carlos's face twitched with humiliation. "Carlos Rivera," he muttered. I'm here because Tamara invited me." Jackson's camera was rolling. "And what were you doing with her upstairs?" "Man, come on, say it." He gave a shrugging, helpless look. "I was sleeping with your wife." Tamara sobbed, hugging herself. "Jackson, I hate you for this," she hissed. "You're humiliating us." He whipped the phone toward her. "No, you humiliated me," he shouted, voice echoing off the quiet suburban street. A neighbor's porch light flicked on a curtain, twitched across the way. "You think I care if the neighbors see? Let them see exactly who you are." She slapped him with her open palm, tears brimming. The blow stung his cheek. He took it without reacting. Camera still aimed. "Good," he said. "Let that be on record too." Then Tamara's face crumpled in despair, whirled and realized she was half-dressed, wearing only a thin robe. She stumbled down the porch steps toward the driveway. "I'm leaving," she cried, rummaging for her car keys and trembling hands. "You're insane." She opened the car door, jumped in, and turned over the engine. The tires screeched as she pulled away, leaving Jackson and Carlos on the porch. Jackson turned his attention back to the kneeling man. "You get in front of that camera again," Jackson ordered. "I want you to apologize to me for stepping into my house. My marriage." Carlos glared. "Man, you forced me at gunpoint. You think any of this will hold up in court?" Jackson let out a bitter laugh. "I'm not doing it for court. I'm doing it so I can watch it every time. I doubt whether I did the right thing divorcing her." Carlos hung his head. "Fine," he muttered. "I'm sorry. All right, I'm sorry I messed with your wife." Jackson exhaled his chest, heaving. It didn't feel as good as he'd imagined. A wave of weariness washed over him. "Up," he commanded, stepping back. "Get in your SUV and never come near us again." Carlos scrambled to his feet. He glanced at the defaced front door. Jackson had banged it in rage on his way out and quickly retreated, shirt bundled in one hand, to his vehicle. As he sped off, Jackson stood there, revolver hanging at his side, phone camera still recording the empty street. He ended up using that footage, along with all the prior evidence in his final court filings for divorce. When Tamara realized how damning it was, she tried to mount a defense. "He threatened me. He threatened my lover at gunpoint." But the video also showed she'd repeatedly attacked him physically. The slap that it was his own house and that she had engaged in continuous adultery. Simone Harding, Jackson's lawyer, was visibly alarmed when she saw the confrontation footage. "You're lucky," she said, gravely in her office, arms folded across her chest. "Lucky you didn't call the police. This could have ended badly for you." Jackson stared at his hands. "I know, but it's done." "Will it hurt the custody case?" Simone sighed. "There's a risk, but given Tamara's track record, if we argue you were in emotional distress and these men were parading in front of your children, the judge may not be too harsh still. You need to keep your temper in check from here on out. He pressed his lips together, understood the court battle took months. Every Jackson worried that his display of intimidation would cost him dearly, but the weight of Tamara's numerous affairs, the risk she'd posed to the children by letting strangers into the house, and the mountain of photographic and audio evidence swayed the judge. In the end, the ruling was harsh on Tamara. No spousal support awarded, joint custody on paper, but the children primarily stayed with Jackson. As Tamara lacked stable housing and had demonstrated poor judgment, the house was his, though he eventually sold it to cut ties with painful memories. When the final gavel fell, Tamara was left to move back in with her mother. She had no job and little savings. Some of the men she'd turned to vanished once she was no longer in a comfortable suburban arrangement. Carlos presumably never spoke to her again. Jackson heard rumors. She'd turned to partying, then to depression, drifting in and out of short-term work. The court had mandated therapy sessions for her before she could have extended visits with the kids. As for Jackson, he kept the revolver locked away in a safe. He wondered sometimes if he'd gone too far. The image of Carlos kneeling at gunpoint on his porch haunted him. Yet a darker part of him still felt a grim satisfaction that he'd forced his betrayers to face him. The heartbreak remained, but the immediate thirst for revenge was sated, replaced by a need to rebuild. His daughters remained confused by the swirl of events, but they were young. He did his best to provide stability, moved them into a new condo across town, and rolled them in counseling. He tried to be present, day after day, forging a new normal. Sometimes they asked about Mom. He explained gently that she was sorting out her own problems, but that she loved them. He refused to poison them against her. They'd figure it out in time. Months rolled by. Jackson resumed a stateside posting, with the Army allowing him to remain near the kids. Elijah occasionally texted to check in, expressing relief that Tamara was out of the neighborhood. Simone Harding emailed a congratulatory note on the final divorce settlement, reminding Jackson to maintain his composure if Tamara's behavior escalated. During a quiet evening as the girls watched cartoons in the other room, Jackson sat in his small living room chair, eyes on the TV but mind elsewhere. He still felt the raw edges of everything that happened, a sense of betrayal, an emptiness where his marriage once was, but also a strange sense of liberation. "I'm free," he whispered, free from the lies. His phone buzzed a text from Tamara. "I'm sorry for everything. Can we talk?" He stared at it for a long moment, heart constricting. Then he set the phone aside, ignoring the message. He had built a new boundary, and that boundary was staying intact. Later that night, after the kids were asleep, he scrolled through the old videos on his phone. The infiltration footage, the hours spent in the dark filming Tamara's affairs, the audio clips from the bug behind the TV, all the heartbreak in pixel form. Then he found the final confrontation video. It showed him from a shaky vantage. He'd propped the phone for part of it, shouting at Carlos, brandishing the gun. He watched himself, eyes glowing with fury, saw Tamara in tears, her half-naked lover kneeling. He heard his own words say it. "Apologize," the man trembling. "I'm sorry I messed with your wife." Jackson's face was carved with rage, mouth twisted in a mix of triumph and heartbreak. It made him shudder. He tapped delete one file at a time, though. He kept the original evidence in private storage just in case some memories needed to fade, so he could move on. He walked outside onto the little balcony of his condo. The night sky was calm, dotted with stars, the air fresh, with none of the desert dryness he'd endured for so long. He thought back to that scorching wind a world away, how it used to gnaw at him. The climate here was gentler, though he felt a swirl of sadness that such calm came at the cost of his marriage. A small voice behind him said, "Daddy?" He turned to see Vanessa, his 9-year-old, rubbing her eyes.
"Why are you still awake, sweetheart?"
he asked softly. She shrugged, stepping onto the balcony. "Bad dreams?" He opened his arm and she slid under it. They stared out at the lights of the city below. "You miss Mommy?" he asked carefully. "Vanessa sniffed sometimes, but she's so different now. She cries a lot." Jackson's chest tightened. "She going through something. It's not your fault." "Yeah," Vanessa said quietly. "I just don't understand why she made you so mad." Jackson sighed. "Grown-up problems," he said.
"All you need to know is,
I love you and Tori more than anything. That's never going to change." She leaned her head against his side. "I love you, Dad." In that moment, he felt the anchor that kept him steady, the love for his children. Everything else, the betrayals and anger, was secondary to being a good father. Time, as it does, blurred the raw edges of the past. Jackson filed away the events of that explosive night on the porch.
as a turning point,
He later sold the house, put the money into a savings plan for the girls' education, and found a quieter life. He discovered he could breathe again without the weight of suspicion and heartbreak pressing on his lungs. Tamara, from what he heard, spiraled for a while, dating questionable men, losing jobs. She occasionally demanded they revisit custody, but each time the court saw the same pattern. She was unstable, with no steady income. Still, Jackson never tried to keep the girl from her. They visited every other weekend, provided she had a safe living space. Sometimes Vanessa or Tori would mention how sad or angry Mom seemed, and Jackson would struggle to respond. He'd say, "She loves you in her own way," and leave it at that. Because even after everything, he didn't want them to grow up hating her. One late afternoon, about a year after the divorce was finalized, Jackson's phone buzzed with a call from an unknown number. He picked up Tamara's voice, quiet and tired, came over the line. "Hi," she said. "It's me." He let out a slow breath, a pause. "I wanted to say thanks for not poisoning the girls against me. I know I messed up, unbelievably so. And I don't expect forgiveness, but I wanted to say it." Jackson stood by the window, eyes on the golden rays of the setting sun. He felt a twinge of that old sorrow, tempered now by acceptance. "They deserve 2 parents," he said softly.
"If you can step up for them."
"I won't stand in your way," she sniffled. "I'm trying. Maybe someday we can, I don't know, have a real conversation for their sake. Maybe be civil." He closed his eyes. Maybe when he ended the call, he noticed his hand trembled slightly. The memories would never vanish, but at least they no longer controlled him. That evening, he took his daughters out for ice cream. They laughed at the sticky swirl of chocolate. Tori held her cone up. "Daddy, try this. It's so good." He took a small lick and smiled, the flavor sweet on his tongue. For the first time, in what felt like eons, there was real joy, something free of suspicion, heartbreak, or anger. And as they walked down the sidewalk together, pink skies overhead, Jackson realized that sometimes revenge wasn't just about humiliating the betrayer. It was also about reclaiming your own power enough to become a better, stronger version of yourself in the aftermath. In that sense, he had triumphed. He had the children's love, a stable life, and a future no longer dictated by Tamara's unfaithfulness. "Come on, girls," he said, ruffling Tor's hair. "Race you to the car." They squealed and ran ahead, giggling. Jackson jogged behind them, heart lighter than it had been in a long time. The old desert wind was far away now, replaced by the bright laughter of family that still belonged to him, no matter how battered his heart had been. And that was enough.